Today's highlights revolve around breaking news. Xi Jinping disappeared for a while at the BRICS Forum. Xi Jinping's regime is on the brink of collapse, surrounded by time bombs, and his close allies are ready to turn against him. Chinese public discontent with Xi Jinping has reached a point of utter despair. China is expected to become more dynamic after the collapse of the CCP regime. What should Xiaoming do? After visiting major countries in the past, Xi Jinping now engages in diplomatic activities, mostly with smaller nations, facing difficulties. His attempt to assert power through the BRICS alliance has encountered resistance. Xi regime on the brink. Chaos grips party, government, and military. 70 officials defying Xi. All will be covered today in China Undercover. You find our information helpful. Please subscribe and turn on the notification. Xi Jinping disappeared for a while at the BRICS Forum. The whole world is looking for him. On the 21st, he arrived at the BRICS Summit in South Africa. What you are seeing now is footage captured by foreign media. However, at the most crucial BRICS Leaders Forum in South Africa, he was conspicuously absent. In fact, even official media edited out his footage of disembarking from the plane. Why? This is highly unusual. The BRICS Summit is believed to be Xi Jinping's effort to salvage China's economy and compete with the United States. It's like the ultimate remedy for China's survival. So why did he disappear from such a significant occasion? It doesn't seem right, does it? Could it be due to health issues, or is there something more challenging domestically that requires his attention? Xi Jinping embarked on a journey all the way to Cape Town in South Africa to attend a BRICS summit. But on the second day, he was nowhere to be found. Let's discuss this mystery. The BRICS, many might not be familiar with it. The BRICS consists of 5 countries whose combined population exceeds 3 billion, accounting for 42% of the world's population. Their GDP is also substantial. Currently, they hold 23% of the global GDP. But the most important significance of the BRICS lies in its mirror image to the G7, meant to counter the dominance of the 7 major industrialized nations. In the second quarter of this year, the Chinese yuan's share in cross-border transactions in China has reached a staggering 49%, officially surpassing the US dollar and hitting a new high of global significance. However, unexpectedly, the BRICS summit exhibited several unusual anomalies. The anomaly is that if the BRICS summit is meant for Xi Jinping to challenge the G7 led by the United States, and if it's supposed to be the crucial elixir for China's continued existence, then logically speaking, he should have played a significant role in this leaders' forum to expand influence and position themselves as leaders. However, as seen in the footage captured on the scene, only the leaders of 4 countries, India, Brazil, South Africa, are forming a close circle. Xi Jinping, you're in South Africa, so why did you disappear? That's right. This is the most concerning aspect for everyone. The most important aspect of the BRICS summit is for the 5 major leaders to gather together and start discussing future plans, including funding schemes and national policies. However, on August 22nd, normally Xi Jinping should have directly attended the so-called BRICS Forum and delivered a speech. Right? Yet Xi Jinping was absent. Who represented him? China's Minister of Commerce, Wang Wentao, spoke on his behalf. Moreover, at this point, Chinese state media provided contradictory statements. Why this dual stance? The first point is that Chinese state media did not explain why Wang Wentao represented Xi Jinping in the speech. Internally, there needs to be an explanation. Therefore, Hua Chunying stated that Xi Jinping had indeed given a speech. At present, there are 2 versions of information, one for the public and one for internal circulation. However, what is certain is that Xi Jinping did not appear. How should we interpret his absence at this summit? The key moment that everyone is observing is why China decided to cut off the event. Let's think about it. The grand scene of the national leader stepping down from a Boeing 747 aircraft equipped with a large external propaganda system. At that moment, the entire South African leadership stands below to welcome. This is such a grand spectacle. But surprisingly, Xi Jinping's scene of stepping down from the plane stairs was directly edited out by Chinese state media. Why was this red carpet walk such an elaborate and highly promoted event? National prestige speaks for itself. Xi Jinping, the leader of China, has arrived. So why is there such a drastic cut? If you look closely, something unnatural. When Xi Jinping stepped out of the aircraft cabin, did you notice that his footsteps were swaying on both sides? And behind him, there are many things to observe, because after Xi Jinping descended, he was welcomed by the President of South Africa, a wealthy businessman who is currently in office. During the discussions, suddenly everyone noticed that Xi Jinping's face appeared fatigued. The point is, his eyes kept looking around as if he was restless. So many people have been guessing whether there are domestic issues, health concerns, or if the internal political situation is becoming untenable. What has trapped Xi Jinping, leading him to disappear? In these recent 2 days, Xi Jinping has been experiencing an unfortunate time. Why, every time Xi Jinping takes a flight, something seems to happen in China. It's quite coincidental. Let's take a look. Just as Xi Jinping went out, unexpectedly, a fire broke out on the side of the Xi'an International Plaza in Tianjin. It was shocking to witness. Xi'an International Plaza, with a total of 32 floors, is located near the Haiguang metro station in a bustling area. As a result, this commercial office building has been destroyed completely. Another incident occurred as Xi Jinping entered the venue. The media captured the moment when his interpreter encountered resistance from security guards and even engaged in a physical altercation. This episode is documented in photographs from that time. Apparently, the person entering the venue was indeed Xi Jinping's personal interpreter. However, the rationale behind security intercepting him remains unclear. Russian media put forth the notion that the interpreter lagged behind Xi Jinping and tried to catch up by running in small steps. This running behavior aroused suspicion among security personnel, prompting them to pursue Xi Jinping. Their primary concern was to avert potential mishaps, leading to a forceful intervention that prevented the interpreter from entering and even led to his removal from the scene. We view this occurrence as relatively minor, a trivial event that could serve as post-dinner conversation material. As for his absence from the business forum, we can posit two plausible explanations. Both reasons hold merit. Firstly, he could have been dealing with urgent matters, possibly related to China's internal situation. Given the myriad challenges encompassing social issues and political conflicts, coupled with a continuous stream of domestic and international complexities, it's highly likely that he needed to allocate time to address these internal matters before attending the dinner and bypassing the business forum. Alternatively, he might not have been acclimated to the environment or might have been experiencing physical discomfort, rendering him unable to stand and speak extensively at the business forum. The Foreign Affairs magazine has released a review article officially marking the advent of CII's age of stagnation, a period characterized by economic stagnation. Since the era of reform and opening up, China has experienced regression in progress. Johnson, the author of New York Times articles, stated that it's crucial to acknowledge that many individuals were misled by the illusion of China's ascent and integration into the global landscape in the past. He said numerous people believed that Xi Jinping's consolidation of power might not be sustained and that economic priorities would necessitate certain openings. However, from Xi Jinping's vantage point and considering the Communist Party Central Committee's political logic, such actions could potentially undermine his previous efforts to centralize power. This approach would not only diminish Xi Jinping's authority, but could even endanger the Communist Party's cohesion. Consequently, the decision was made to let the economy stagnate, retracting from progress and making concessions on reform and opening up. The emphasis shifted toward centralizing power and steadfastly resisting liberalization. Rather than making concessions to appease public dissent, the focus was on utilizing resources to control the populace, which better aligned with the Communist Party's interests. Xi Jinping's rule faces imminent demise, 70 officials quietly defied. Let's talk more about some reasons for Xi Jinping's change in plans at the summit. The exact reasons are still unclear. However, we can think back to recent events. He attended a luncheon hosted by South African President Cyril Ramaphosa just before the forum. The two leaders also met during Xi Jinping's state visit on Tuesday morning, emphasizing the need for stronger joint influence in global affairs from their respective countries. It is obviously said that Xi Jinping regime is facing a critical situation with potential challenges from within and close associates possibly turning against him. Public sentiment towards Xi Jinping in China has reached a point of despair, and there's an expectation that China will become more vibrant after the collapse of the Chinese Communist Party. What should be done next? While Xi Jinping used to visit major nations, he's now focusing on diplomatic relations with smaller countries. This change in strategy has presented difficulties, as seen in his encounter with resistance at the BRIC summit. China is facing a crisis, with internal challenges and close aids possibly turning against him. Reports suggest that China's economy has experienced a sharp decline this year and is also dealing with various challenges, both natural and man-made. On the international stage, relations with Western countries, particularly the United States, have deteriorated. The Xi Jinping regime is grappling with challenges both at home and abroad, which is causing instability. In recent days, several analysts have expressed a consensus that the Xi regime might be on the brink of collapse. They suggest that Xi's close aides might not stand by him and could betray him in a critical situation. Prominent Hong Kong commentator Yan Gu has recently posted on Facebook, highlighting an interview with American Chinese scholar Zhu Chenggang. Xu outlined 3 potential scenarios for the Chinese Communist Party: a palace coup resulting in Xi Jinping's removal, a financial crisis leading to economic and political turmoil, or the party using authoritarian force to delay a social crisis. Yan Chengguo believes that the latter 2 scenarios are currently unfolding in China. The concern is that the longer the Chinese Communist Party postpones addressing these issues, the greater and more challenging the eventual fallout will be. Yan Chenggu notes that the Chinese Communist Party has been aggressively purging the medical and healthcare sector, a highly profitable industry. Xi Jinping himself has been cutting off potential sources of wealth and creating animosity, alienating many. The rapid and profound deterioration in China's situation over the past 6 months has been astonishing and unexpected. Chaos is evident within the Chinese Communist Party's leadership across politics, government, and military. Society is witnessing growing resistance and a political crisis. These factors are contributing to financial and economic problems. More concerning is that the leadership seems incapable of effectively managing the situation. The pressures, both domestically and internationally, are mounting, and crises are emerging in various regions. The nation seems to be awaiting a critical turning point. The report points out that even President Biden has recently referred to the Chinese Communist Party as a time bomb. This level of serious assertion by a U.S. president regarding another nation is unprecedented. Xi Jinping seems to be disregarding national welfare and is focusing on managing the aftermath. Firstly, he appears to be desperately exploiting resources from the people to deal with an imminent financial crisis. Secondly, there's a large-scale purge of opposition forces within the party to prevent internal instability during a crisis. Thirdly, efforts are being intensified to expand violent suppression forces to prepare for potential future social unrest. Even the Beijing Municipal Commission of Health has announced a policy that allows criminals to avoid punishment if they surrender their ill-gotten gains. This contradicts the principle that ill-gotten wealth should be confiscated, and it raises questions about the CCP's dire financial situation. Given the circumstances, how much longer can the CCP hold on? Regarding the timing and situation of the CCP's collapse, Yan Chenggu believes that it could happen within 5 to 10 years. This is due to the relatively substantial resources that the CCP still possesses. Recent comments by US-based Chinese commentator Deng Yuan on August 13 reveal insights from a friend who holds a senior position within the system. He mentioned that most of the mid to high-level officials he interacts with within the party do not support Xi Jinping's policies. Many of them view the current backtracking as a joke, and this situation won't last long. When asked about the timing of reform, whether it'll happen in a year, 2 years, or 3 years, he couldn't estimate precisely but suggested a high likelihood within 5 years. In a post on August 21, Deng Yuan further elaborated that he recently met with a retired high-ranking official who had frequently interacted with Xi Jinping due to work nature. However, this time he visited the U.S. for personal reasons. When asked about how many officials within the party, especially at mid to high levels, opposed Xi Jinping. He responded that aside from CIA's confidants and those who have benefited from him, at least 70 of mid to high-level cadres are against CIA's approach and policies. Even CIA's confidants are dissatisfied with his leadership style and practices, though they may not openly express it. Some details in their interactions indicate that Zheng Yuwen continued to inquire whether Xi Jinping's time is up given the poor economy and widespread public discontent. The retired official pondered and said that it's hard to say for sure, but what is certain is that his confidants do not want to go down with him. They are likely to betray him at a critical moment. Continuing with the report, China's Public Opinion Daily expresses complete despair towards Xi Jinping. The New York Times reports that as the economy faces difficulties, Chinese business owners are struggling, and the general public has little hope for the future. The hope for an economic rebound has been shattered, and there are concerns that this could be just the beginning of unimaginable circumstances. Confidence in the country is at an all-time low. The New York Times report, titled Little Hope for the Future, Chinese Struggle Amid Economic Downturn, directly addresses China's current economic decline, shocking many Chinese citizens accustomed to continuous economic growth and improving living standards. Nowadays, they must cope with difficulties in doing business and a reduction in personal wealth. The report summarizes opinions from over a dozen business owners and the general public, revealing that their confidence in China's economy and future is at its lowest point. If they once held hope for an economic rebound, that hope has now been dashed, in addition to concerns that this might just be the beginning of unprecedented challenges. They also worry that the Chinese government lacks solutions, and bad news keeps pouring in. Mr. Li, the owner of a wholesale automotive parts company, mentioned that he used to believe that China would gradually improve. But now the most frightening thing is that everyone is confused, not knowing what to do next. In the first half of this year, his company's revenue was even worse than the previous year, which had been impacted by risk control measures for several weeks. He saw a 15% decline in the first half of last year. Like his company, many other businesses are also struggling. Some of his customers run auto repair shops, and due to reduced spending by car owners, some of these repair shops have already closed down. Mr. Li, who once owned 4 shops, has now closed 2 of them. He has laid off 2/3 of his employees and stopped investing in new products. He also tried to sell an apartment he invested in. Even after lowering the price from 3.3 million RMB to 0.9 million RMB, he found no buyers. The report points out that relying on official Chinese government data to understand the economic situation has become increasingly difficult. The authorities have stopped releasing certain data that had been regularly published for years, including youth unemployment rates, which have reached new highs. The other official data released is also shockingly grim. This report mentions that anxiety among the Chinese population is generally on the rise, and people have started saving more and spending less, leading to deflation. In a major city in southwest China, Mr. Liu, in his 30s and founder of an education startup company, stated that in previous years his company's annual revenue used to grow by 40%, but this year it has remained flat, which is clearly bad news. Mr. Liu, who has around 1 million yuan in cash and owns 2 unfinished properties, is determined to keep his monthly expenses around 5,000 to 6,000 yuan. This includes half of the rent. He has no plans to change his car and doesn't intend to buy a house in the short term, anticipating the possibility of China's economy continuing to decline for several years. He sold all his stocks in Chinese companies earlier this year, and he won't touch any Chinese stocks, even if they are listed on the US or Hong Kong stock markets. Mr. Dai, a 44-year-old commercial real estate consultant in Beijing, earned less than 100,000 yuan in the first half of this year. This is only about half of his income during the pandemic and less than 15% of his income before the pandemic. Another source of his income was renting office spaces. But one of his tenants went out of business half a year ago, leaving him without that income. He openly admitted that his current state of mind is one of resignation, and he has no expectations for the future. The founder of a financial consulting company in China, Mr. Fu, also owns a house that he can't sell. He mentioned that his business volume has significantly increased this year due to many wealthy Chinese realizing during the pandemic that no matter how much money they have, it can't buy safety or dignity. They sought his help to transfer their financial assets overseas. Interestingly, despite the increase in his business, Mr. Fu didn't expand his company. Instead, he reduced his staff from 12 to 10 people. He is more critical of the Chinese government's actions during the pandemic period, shocked by how they have been targeting one industry after another. He wonders whether the country intends to control everything or allow people to earn some money. He mentioned that he used to believe that working hard would guarantee success, but now he is concerned about how to run his company effectively. The report highlights that Chinese citizens feel despair because they can't envision breaking free from this vicious cycle, and they believe that the root cause of the problem lies in the ideological stance of China's top leader Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping seems to dislike private enterprises and has gradually undermined them. Mr. Wang, aged 35, who had a job in the banking sector, resigned earlier this year and plans to apply for a research program in Australia. He mentioned that last autumn, during the 20th Congress of the Communist Party of China, the new leadership lineup was announced, consisting entirely of Xi Jinping's close associates. This disillusioned him, as he believes that the country's ability to correct itself has been lost. Even though Mr. Wang's parents are wealthy, he is pessimistic about whether he will have the same opportunities his parents had. He expresses that it's impossible to make money in China and that he's currently focused on ensuring basic livelihood rather than finding solutions. Continuing with the next part of the report, after the potential collapse of the Communist Party of China, the country might gain more vitality. Renowned Hong Kong author Yan Chenggu posted an article on his Facebook, mentioning that some netizens believe the collapse of the Communist Party is a dilemma between prolonged pain and short-term suffering. He shares the sentiment that the Communist Party's collapse is a matter of enduring pain, whether long or short, but he'd prefer the shorter pain over the prolonged one. He believes that as long as the Communist Party remains in power, regardless of any reforms, China won't experience revival, and the opportunity for a rebirth lies in its collapse. Comparing the two options, accepting short-term pain is preferable to enduring long-term pain. After the collapse of the Communist Party, the communist regime will disintegrate. Some local governments might fall apart, while others could struggle to function without funding from the central government. Many provinces might face deficits, leading to tough times. With the central government gone and a lack of direction, administrative confusion will ensue. Local governments will lack both funds and authority, causing societal disobedience and ultimately resulting in chaos. What's worse is that after over 70 years of communist rule, a set of values contrary to common ethics has been ingrained in society. Rampant corruption, a disregard for moral ideals and responsibilities, and individuals prioritizing personal gain over public welfare have been nurtured. Achieving social cohesion and pursuing an ideal state under these circumstances becomes incredibly challenging. The timeline for such a transformation is uncertain. The collapse of the Communist Party will undoubtedly hinge on the collapse of the national finances. At that point, there will be questions about pension disbursements, sustaining healthcare benefits, and maintaining public order, since public security forces like the police and paramilitary might be incapacitated due to unpaid wages. With the government losing control, societal disorder will prevail, leading to widespread turmoil and the concern of how citizens can protect themselves. However, the collapse of the Communist Party is not devoid of benefits. First and foremost, without the dictatorship of the Communist Party, people will regain personal freedom. Market-driven economy will naturally emerge with individual economic freedoms, self-regulation, supply and demand, production, and circulation. Market mechanisms will swiftly recover, laying the foundation for the people's well-being. Even without a central government, an army, or regulations, economic activities will persist, possibly even with more vitality than before. Secondly, without the constraints of a dictatorship, the market will attract foreign investments from risk-takers, including those from Hong Kong and Taiwan, injecting a new sense of vitality into the chaotic times. Local private enterprises will escape government oppression and exploitation, nurturing fresh hopes for the future. As businesses open, job opportunities will arise. Factories will employ workers. New products will find markets. Investments will flow. Incomes will spur further production. The economy will gradually mend. Societal mechanisms will restart, and despite the painful process, hope will flourish. Furthermore, the massive government apparatus will either disappear or significantly downsize, reducing excessive administrative expenses. Local governments can better manage compact budgets, and citizens won't need to support a large number of corrupt officials. There won't be a need to cater to retired cadres or fund military and public security forces for stability, nor to expend huge sums on supporting global revolution. At that point, all local government revenues can be directed towards public services. Of course, this relies on establishing effective public oversight. Lastly, after the collapse of the Communist Party, the Chinese people will look toward the future, drawing from Taiwan's democratic system and Hong Kong's legal framework. A plethora of professionals returning from the West, having experienced firsthand the benefits of political reform, will enthusiastically advocate for change. These conditions favor China's path toward a democratic system. Coastal provinces will seek resources and market access, while inland provinces will require foreign trade. Prolonged fragmentation is detrimental to economic development and cultural exchange. Therefore, negotiations and cooperation between different provinces and cities will be essential. Opportunities still exist. At that time, the advantages of the Taiwan and Hong Kong systems will radiate northward, contributing to China's democratic progress. The ideal scenario is for the Communist Party to announce its dissolution, similar to what happened in Russia after the fall of the Soviet Union. Local government officials and enlightened individuals within the military, disillusioned with the socialist system, would embrace a stance aligned with local interests to manage regional affairs. Gradually, the transition to an open political environment would occur, party restrictions would be lifted, and preparations for democratic elections at all levels would commence. Such a transition is not entirely implausible. Of course, this would entail a period of anarchy, varying in length and intensity, with some conflicts smaller in scale and others prolonged. Contradictions and conflicts would emerge between provinces and cities, navigating the balance between cooperation and rivalry, business and defense, and in the worst case, even warfare. Perhaps this is all part of a process. Even if armed conflicts arise, neither side would be capable of eradicating the other. They would only deplete each other's resources. Consequently, a negotiation would eventually be inevitable, resulting in a scenario where interests are shared, mutually constrained, and perhaps leading to a form of federation based on common interests. However, whether China can achieve such a scenario depends on the will of its people. The only thing that can prevent the collapse of the Communist Party is the Chinese people themselves. If society deteriorates to a point where Chinese people choose to kneel before the government en masse, with young people lying flat at home and retired individuals preparing to face hardship, then the Communist Party won't collapse. This would be a situation of enduring prolonged suffering, a future that Chinese people would have chosen for themselves. The collapse of the Communist Party is a probable event. Regardless of whether one believes it or not, collapse is bound to happen. However, after the collapse, there will be a prolonged period of hardship before things settle down. Eventually, old territories will be rebuilt, and a new China will be forged. Perhaps the vast territory of Greater China will splinter into several smaller nations, and while small nations aren't inherently bad, as long as people have peace and prosperity, even small nations can assist one another, just like Lithuania. Small nations might be easier to manage than large ones, but due to long-term economic interests, these small nations will still need to find mutually beneficial models of cooperation. When the time comes, the advantages of Taiwan's and Hong Kong's systems will radiate northward, contributing to China's democratic evolution. The most ideal outcome after the Communist Party's collapse would be for it to announce dissolution, akin to what happened in Russia. The most unimaginable aspect of this is how to handle the nuclear warheads. Eventually, they will end up in someone's hands, and what will be done with those inhumane weapons? It's almost unbearable to think about. It could be a blessing or a curse. But whether it's a curse that can be avoided or something that history will bear witness to, the fate of the world lies in the hands of each individual. And in the face of such a dismal destiny, a mere scholar like myself is filled with deep concerns. Sometimes one might think too much. In the face of all the insurmountable challenges, apart from the collapse of the Communist Party, it is unknown what other options China has, what chances for rebirth Hong Kong still possesses, and what security Taiwan can rely on. It could be wishful thinking or mere daydreaming. Xi Jinping's visits to major countries before the pandemic versus smaller countries after the pandemic. According to the latest Asian reports, Chinese President Xi Jinping arrived in South Africa on Tuesday to attend the 15th BRIC summit. This is his 7th overseas visit since the end of the COVID-19 pandemic and differs from his pre-pandemic visits to major countries. Now, Xi Jinping's post-pandemic visits are concentrated on developing and geographically peripheral nations. Some analysts suggest that China's wolf warrior diplomacy aims to compensate for strained relations with Western countries by cozying up to developing nations. However, with China's economic decline, diplomatic leverage is dwindling, reducing the number of warm nations it can seek. Since taking office as General Secretary of the Communist Party of China and President of the country in 2012, up until August of this year, Xi Jinping has visited 70 countries. After the outbreak of the pandemic in early 2020, he ceased foreign visits, marking the longest period without overseas visits among G20 leaders, only resuming his travels in September 2022. He has visited countries including Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Russia. While Xi Jinping previously visited various countries in Europe and the Americas, after the pandemic, his visits are limited to smaller or non-major economic countries. Li Zhengzhe, deputy researcher of the China Institute of International Studies, analyzed that Xi Jinping wants to elevate China to the status of a global superpower. He implies that China should become a crucial nation capable of shaping international order and leading global development. Li Zhengzhe said that whether through aggressive foreign military expansion or wolf warrior diplomacy, the net effect has been negative, resulting in tense relations with many major Western nations. After the pandemic, Xi Jinping has mostly visited international events and developing countries. It's evident that China's current environment is at odds with his ideal goals. This reflects Beijing's substantial diplomatic troubles. China has relied on economic diplomacy to attract developing nations, but its recent economic downturn has weakened its diplomatic leverage, reducing the attractiveness of China to these countries. Li Zhengzhe commented that in recent years, under Xi Jinping's strict control, the control over the entire economy has deviated from market economy principles, causing more foreign investment to leave China. In the current situation, where China needs foreign investment, but foreign investors are unwilling to invest, naturally, China's economic situation will only continue to deteriorate, and Xi Jinping's influence will continue to wane. Regarding Xi Jinping's current trip, according to the Financial Times, the BRICS summit will discuss its largest expansion in over a decade. China will urge BRICS nations to become rivals to the geopolitical power of the G7. The Global Times reported that the summit's focus will include expanding the BRICS mechanism and reducing dependence on the US dollar. Kruger, a member of South Africa's International Affairs Research Center, stated that this summit wouldn't likely result in dramatic outcomes as Western countries still hold power, and while China is rising, it's not yet a dominant global power. Xi Jinping's attempt to bolster his image through the BRICS group faces resistance. According to Deutsche Welle, Chinese President Xi Jinping's arrival in South Africa to attend the BRICS summit has brought discussions of expanding the group's membership into focus. While some media portray China's move as a counterbalance to the Quad Alliance, experts believe that the BRICS cooperation is not a trust-based alliance, and countries like India aren't keen on expanding it. The BRICS group consists of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, representing 40 of the global population and 26 of the world's wealth. The summit is scheduled to take place from the 22nd to the 24th of this month in Johannesburg, South Africa, except for Russian President Putin attending virtually. Other leaders will be present in person at the summit. Chinese media reported that on the evening of August 21st local time, Chinese President Xi Jinping's special plane arrived in Johannesburg, where he issued a written statement at the airport. He expressed his belief that this summit would become a significant milestone in the development of the BRICS cooperation mechanism, elevating unity and cooperation among developing nations to a higher level. South African President Ramaphosa invited leaders from around 60 countries to attend the meeting. Insiders have indicated that several countries will be invited to join the BRICS group. South African officials previously stated that 23 countries expressed interest. A recent report from the Financial Times also suggested that more countries might be invited. China aims to enhance the competitiveness of the BRICS countries to challenge the group of seven major industrial nations. An unnamed Chinese official mentioned that if the BRICS group can expand its membership and match its domestic GDP with that of the G7, the collective influence of BRICS in the world will strengthen. According to a report by Deutsche Welle on August 21, the issue of whether the global South should counterbalance the West and whether more countries should join the BRICS group is a major topic of discussion in this summit. Liu, a China expert, stated in an interview with Deutsche Welle that the anti-American sentiment among BRICS countries benefits China, aligning with China's goals. However, compared to recent developments, the BRICS cooperation mechanism is not yet a fully operational alliance based on mutual trust. Therefore, Beijing's primary goal is to partially diminish the role the United States can play. Manfred, a political scientist from the Free University of Berlin, believes that the expansion plan of BRICS countries is contentious within the group. Countries like India, Brazil, and South Africa are not eager to share their existing influence with new member states, nor do they wish to introduce more problems through new members. Thus, these three countries are not particularly interested in the expansion. Manfred says that if each member country brings in its allies, it will exacerbate internal divisions and conflicts within the group. Therefore, the issue of expansion is a highly sensitive topic. In April of this year, South African Foreign Minister Pandor stated that all parties should first discuss and establish standards for admitting new member countries. Manfred believes that some countries may become BRICS members at that time, but they may not enjoy the same rights and means of expression as the original members. And that is today's episode. If you found this video informative, please subscribe and ring a bell to get notification. Thank you for watching and see you next time.